Okay, this is probably the last video of this mini series. I'm gonna try to make it as fast as possible. And it's about numbers because we need to have your numbers really narrowed down and really understanding what's going on in your business. Here is where vast majority of us fail at the beginning. We don't know what the heck. This is also why so many people tell you that you're gonna make a lot of money, but you don't even understand what you're actually investing. Once we are getting bookings, we understand about funnel, we understand about reaching out people and nurture them in our conversations to eventually take the booking deposit and booking them. Now we gotta understand how much I can actually scale with this first interaction. Measuring and marketing is hard because eventually marketing is getting out your message to the people, and you can do it many ways, like we talk about it. But then like all of those touch points with your potential client help. And whenever you get some clients with a particular asset, in reality, it could happen that other touch points help you as well. Or some assets that maybe they're not getting bookings just yet, your message is still getting out, so they're still contributing. So it can become a little bit harder, but we want to see this from the funnel that I just explained you with this, which is the having the ad to your direct messages, and then we can talk about it. Okay, I have this little simple table here, which is by ad spend. All right. Here, we're gonna touch base into how much we can actually spend. This is money that you should not be relying on because this is one of the things that I've seen so many artists like, okay, I wanna pay with credit card and then they end up in debt. But we are talking about ads, we're talking about things that we don't know for sure. So hopefully this is money that you don't depend on, all right? Let's say each client is only paying $500 considering their first session and the touch up. When I say lead, it's basically an inquiry in your direct messages, all right? Someone who is like inquiring about your services. This is what my clients are paying from $1 to $3 to $5. The booking rate is usually from 5% to 20%. 5% is in the slow months, and it also depends on the skill that you have to nurture your clients. We touched base in the previous video about selling. If you don't care, if you don't follow up, this booking rate is going to go down. But usually it's around 5% to 20%. This is the worst case scenario, and 20% is the best case scenario. Also depending on how much audience you have and if you're retargeting people. But that's for another video. For now, we'll talk about top of funnel, completely strangers, okay? So now what I mean by low months and high peak months or months that have more demand, it's basically these stats. The demand has been across these 4 years. So we see that it's increasing, but also we can see that some months have better performance than others. If we're talking about July, this is kind of like the worst, all the way to August. Here's where it start to picking up, and then all the way to October, and then in October we're going. These are basically holidays, and this is summer where everybody's out. Like nobody want to get their brows done because they sweat, they want to be under the sun, and basically you cannot do that when you have a tattoo. So also January, it's a little bit down, and it start catching up. So usually this, let's say the lowest point, July, December, we can expect 5% for completely strangers. And then on these high months like May, like October, we can expect for like up to 20%, which is awesome. That being said, let's go with this 5%. One of the biggest issues about running ads that I've seen is if we launch, for example, in December, the booking rate is going to be low because the demand is lower. Total potential leads based on this investment and based on this cost, we are going to get around 142 leads in general. And then you have potential bookings because we're talking about 5%. That is 7 bookings, which is why it's like, oh my God, I'm investing so much money and I'm only getting 7 bookings a month. Well, you probably are talking to top of funnel, which is the hardest people to convert, and you are talking to them in one of the slowest months, like no wonder. Then you have monthly revenue. Well, if you're charging $500 per client, you have 3,500, and then estimated profit. Well, if we rest the ad spend, it's only 3,000. Now, this is when we have the 5% for top of funnel. When we have good months, we can expect around 20% of bookings. Now, again, same amount of leads, potential bookings. Now we're talking about 28 bookings. All right, that changes a lot of the things, and the monthly revenue about 14,200. So this is how much it changed the game. Now, if we are not reaching these numbers, whenever like someone asks me how many bookings you can guarantee, honestly, no one should guarantee you anything, right? This is all based on demand. This is all based on the skills. This is all based on how we're following up through the conversations. This is all based on How much do we know about our customer? How much trust they have on you? So there's so many things that are involved into bookings. And until we understand all these things is when we actually gonna have a more predictable income. Some people say, I want to make, for example, 30K, I want to make 20K. Yeah, but how much do you have to invest? They say, oh, I can only invest 200. Like, let's be realistic. Like, there is no way to make that amount of money if we only have 200. All right. So now, because all these little steps takes time and skill, I suggest everybody to start with 300, right? One of my clients actually got 17 because she was on May. May was a good month. She got 17 bookings because we were talking about 20%. And then on July, spending the same amount of money at 300, it went down to 5% because that's the demand. But let's say 5%, we're talking about 4 bookings. All right, and some people say, oh, my funnel is broken, ads not working. It's just the demand, right? And then we can track base everything here. Now, this probably doesn't look that sexy, but if you have a business, you need to have all these numbers in mind, okay? So then you understand, okay, I'm spending this amount of money, this is what I'm getting, this is the amount of leads, so how much I'm paying per lead, and what is my booking rate? And then obviously your cost per service or your client has to be changed. My insurance, how much I'm paying in marketing, how much I'm actually making revenue. And then you have this by month and you can actually track your income and have a more predictable way, right? But you have to understand these numbers to set up your expectations clearly. Because if we are launching in a low month and I don't know how to sell, like I never did it, and I'm reaching out to top of funnel and I am only putting $300 and then I'm upset because I'm only got 4 bookings. It's like, well, we gotta have the expectations clear because now we understand that we are talking about top funnel, which is completely strangers, and this is just what we can expect. And this is why it's also important to break your costs down. So if I'm spending $300, I'm like, this is why it's important to have your cost per lead, like understanding it. Obviously, this is not the most important metric, but at least you understand, like, if this is high, then your bookings are gonna be lower because you have this limited amount of investment. Now, if your cost per lead is $15 or more, then you see your potential bookings is only 1. And so you invested $300 on ads, right? And you only got 1 booking. So your estimated profit is only 200 because you gotta, like, your monthly revenue is 500 because that's how much you charge for that client. But then you gotta deduct your ads. And then I've seen people even paying $20. That's crazy. Like, they're launching ads that their messaging is so off that it's only bringing like your cost per lead is 20, therefore you're not even making bookings. And then you're like, oh, Facebook ad doesn't work. So it's very important to narrow down your messaging to actually talk to your ideal client so that you can bring down your cost per lead. There are so many factors into getting bookings. It's not like you launch one, you're done. There are so many things that have to be considered. Now, based on these numbers, you can also break it down by, okay, this is my income goal, this is my bookings goal. This is especially if you're sometimes restricted by timing, or like you probably have another job or you have a staff members. Hopefully this give you another aha moment. There's so many things that we have to uncover. This is only the beginning because we're talking about I need cash and I need it now. These are the things that you have to consider. But then we can talk about retargeting and how we can actually nurture people to buy once, twice, bring out their people, give us referrals. This is huge, but I want you to have these fundamentals. See you in the next video. All right, bye.